If this story hit you somewhere real, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to like and subscribe. I still have the wedding ring. It sits in the bottom drawer of my desk at the pharmacy, wrapped in a receipt from a gas station outside Redding, California. The last purchase I made before I crossed out of Oregon for good. I don't know why I kept it. Maybe because some part of me needed a physical object to prove that the whole thing had actually happened. That I hadn't invented the 7 years, the late nights, the kid I'd raised like my own blood. That I hadn't imagined walking out of that hotel at 7:30 on a Tuesday evening with coffee on my shoes and nothing left to save. My name is Nathan Cole. I'm 42 years old, and until roughly 3 months ago, I would have told you my life was steady, not spectacular, steady. I'd been a pharmacist at Riverside Medical Center in Portland, Oregon for 11 years. Decent salary, manageable hours, the kind of work that keeps communities running without ever showing up in anyone's highlight reel. I didn't need it to be glamorous. I just needed it to mean something. I met Serena 8 years ago at a hospital fundraiser. She was an operations manager at the Grand Meridian Hotel downtown, and she moved through that room like someone who already owned it. Confident, quick, exactly the kind of woman you notice before you have a reason to. She had a 3-year-old son named Marcus from a marriage that had dissolved when the boy was barely walking. The ex had gone quiet and stayed that way. I never asked too many questions about him. I didn't need to. From the first afternoon I spent with that kid, something settled in me that I hadn't known was restless. Within a few months, I was the one teaching Marcus how to grip a baseball bat. I was the one at the kitchen table with the second-grade spelling lists. I was the one standing in his doorway at 9 at night, making sure the nightlight was on. He became my son in the way that actually counts, which has nothing to do with biology and everything to do with showing up. Serena and I married the following year. We bought a house in northeast Portland with a big backyard and a garage I never quite got organized. Life felt, for a long time, like something I'd earned. The thing about trusting someone completely is that it doesn't fail loudly. It fails in increments my pareja small, you mistake them for nothing. Late vendor meetings, weekend conferences, business dinners that ran past 10. I didn't question any of it. That was my first mistake. Not the trust itself, but the way I let it insulate me from paying attention. The truth arrived on a Tuesday evening in late September, wearing the shape of an ordinary gesture. Serena had mentioned a vendor meeting that would run late, and I finished my shift early and decided to bring her coffee, her usual, oat milk, 1 sugar, a small thing I'd done 100 times. I parked in the Grand Meridian's garage around 7:30. The lobby was nearly empty. I took the elevator to the 3rd floor where the management offices were. Light came from under one door at the end of the corridor. I could hear her laughing, not her work laugh. I knew that one. This was something quieter, more private, a man's voice, low and unhurried. I pushed the door open without knocking. Serena was perched on the edge of her desk, skirt hiked up, leaning toward a man I recognized without wanting to. Daniel Marsh, one of the hotel's primary corporate clients, his hand rested on her knee. The space between their faces was nothing. The coffee slipped out of my hand. The cup hit the floor and the lid popped, and dark liquid spread outward across the carpet like something irreversible happening in real time. They both went still. Serena's face cycled through white, then red. She came off the desk and the words started tumbling out. "Nathan, this isn't, we were just..." And I didn't wait for the sentence to find its shape. I turned around. Behind me, her heels clipped across the floor and she called my name twice more before the elevator doors closed. I drove for hours that night, past midnight before I came home. She was in the living room, red-eyed, waiting with the posture of someone who'd been rehearsing. The explanations came immediately, stacked on top of each other. I held up one hand. "Not tonight." She stared at me. "Please, Nathan." "Tomorrow," I said. "We'll talk tomorrow." But I already knew there was nothing coming tomorrow that would change what I'd seen. The marriage was finished. I just hadn't announced it yet. The next morning I called in sick. First time in 3 years. I sat at the kitchen table with black coffee while Serena got Marcus ready for school. He came in with his backpack sideways and a grin that had nothing to do with what was happening in the room. Morning, Nathan. Can we work on my change-up after school? I forced a smile. We'll see, bud. He didn't notice the weight of it. Kids that age don't, unless you give them a reason to look. The moment the door closed behind them, I opened my laptop and started making calls. First call went to a college friend named Owen who worked as a financial advisor in the Pearl District. I gave him one sentence. Serena's been cheating and I need to do this right. He didn't editorialize. Come by my office this afternoon. Second call was harder. I'd found the number online, a private investigation firm in Beaverton. A woman answered. Clipped voice, no preamble. Hartfield Investigations, this is Paula. I need my wife followed, I said. I need documentation. Paula didn't waste time. How recent is the suspicion? Since last night, when I walked in on her with someone. You saw them together? Yes, at her office. But I need more than one incident. I need a complete picture. Understood. I can begin tomorrow. $150 an hour, expenses billed separately. Start tomorrow, I said. We met that afternoon. I gave Paula everything, Serena's schedule, her car, her usual routes, Daniel Marsh's name, the hotel's layout. That evening, when Serena came home, I was in the same chair. She stood in the doorway like the floor between us might give way. Nathan, we need to talk. Yeah, we do. She sat across from me, hands folded. Last night wasn't what it looked like. I almost laughed. It looked like you were about to kiss a client at your desk. He was being inappropriate. I was managing the situation professionally. Don't. My voice was level. I saw what I saw. Don't rewrite it. Her eyes filled. It was a mistake, a stupid mistake. It didn't mean anything. I swear it's done. How long? She looked at the wall. A few months. But it's over now, Nathan. I'll end it. I stood and picked up my keys. I'm going out. We'll talk more later. Where are you going? Does it matter? I spent that afternoon at Owen's office going through our joint finances methodically, the mortgage, the savings, the accounts. He helped me open a new account at a separate bank and set up modest automatic transfers, amounts small enough to be invisible until they weren't. By the end of the week, I'd have enough runway to move if I needed to. That evening, I met Paula at a coffee shop near the Beaverton waterfront. She was in her early 50s, gray hair cropped close, the kind of eyes that look like they've already accounted for most scenarios. I passed her Serena's information and told her what I needed. I'll have something for you within the week, she said, possibly sooner depending on how careless she is. When I got home, Marcus was asleep. Serena was on the couch. She looked smaller than usual. The confident woman from the fundraiser 8 years ago had been replaced by something more fragile and harder to read. Can we fix this? She asked. I looked at her for a moment. I don't know yet, but I did know. I just wasn't ready to hold the full weight of it out loud. 3 days later, Marcus and I were in the backyard in the late afternoon, tossing a baseball back and forth. The autumn light was going golden and low. He'd been quieter than usual all week, and I'd been watching him the way you watch a kid when you know something is eating at them and you're not sure how much they've already figured out. He caught the ball and held it instead of throwing it back. Nathan, is everything okay with you and Mom? My chest tightened. This was the conversation I'd been building walls against. I walked over and sat down on the back steps. He came and sat beside me, staring at his shoes. What makes you ask that, bud? He shrugged. You guys don't really talk, and Mom cries when she thinks I can't hear her. Did I do something? No. I put my hand on his shoulder. Marcus, whatever's happening between your mom and me, that has nothing to do with you. Nothing. Not a single part of it. Do you hear me? He nodded, but the doubt was still in his face. Adults have problems they need to work through, I said. I chose the words carefully. But here's what I need you to know. Whatever happens, I love you. You're my son in every way that matters to me. That doesn't change. He looked up at me, his eyes going shiny. Promise? I promise. He threw his arms around me and I held him tight, my throat burning. This kid had done nothing wrong. He'd woken up one morning in the middle of consequences he hadn't caused and couldn't control. I couldn't shield him from all of it, but I could make absolutely sure he knew he was loved. That night, after he went to sleep, I sat at my desk and wrote him a letter, 3 drafts before I got it right. I told him I was leaving, not because of him, but because his mother and I couldn't build something whole out of what was left. I told him that when he was old enough to make his own choices, if he wanted to find me, I would be there. I sealed the letter, wrote for Marcus, "Open when you're 18" on the front, and locked it in the fireproof safe in the garage. Then I called a lawyer. A colleague of Owen's had recommended a family law attorney named Claire Weston, sharp, discreet, practiced in exactly this kind of situation. I met her the next day. She was in her mid-40s, the kind of attorney who listens without shifting in her chair and asks questions that only sound simple. "Clean divorce," she said when I finished. "No custody dispute, since Marcus isn't biologically yours. Just a clean exit." "Yes," I said. "But there's one other thing." I placed a folder on her desk. "I want to establish a trust for Marcus. College expenses. Serena doesn't have access to it. Marcus gets it when he turns 18. Claire raised an eyebrow. "That's not an obligation you have." "No," I said. "He's a good kid. None of this is his fault." She studied me for a moment. "I can structure that. Give me a week to finalize everything. How much are you putting in?" "50,000 to start. I'll contribute more over time if I can." She wrote it down. "And you're certain, once we file, there's no reversing the clock?" "I'm certain." I walked out of her office and felt the machinery shift, the way things do when a decision stops being theoretical and becomes real. Paula's report was all I was still waiting for. She called me 6 days later. I was behind the pharmacy counter, working a busy afternoon, when my phone went off. "I've got what you need," she said. "Same place, tonight at 8? I was there early. Paula arrived exactly on time, set a manila envelope on the table between us, and sat back. "It's more than you thought," she said. Her voice had no effect, just information, delivered clean. I opened the envelope. The first photograph showed Serena at a downtown bar, leaning into Daniel Marsh. The second caught them walking into the Grand Meridian together. A third, taken 90 minutes later, showed them leaving. Serena's expression loose, unhurried, but the envelope didn't stop there. There were other men, a man I didn't recognize meeting her at a restaurant in the Pearl District, a younger guy she was meeting at a fitness club I'd never heard of. The timestamps ran across 6 months, maybe more. "She's been active," Paula said, keeping her voice clinical. 3 different men confirmed, likely others I didn't catch. I sat with the cold for a moment, not anger, just cold. How long did this go back? As best you could tell, at least 6 months from what I've documented, possibly longer. I closed the envelope. "Thank you. Send your final invoice." She nodded. "For what it's worth. I'm sorry. You seem like a decent person." "Decent people come in last," I said. I stood up and left. That night, I lay in the dark beside Serena while she slept and stared at the ceiling and thought about the pattern, not just the betrayal, the architecture of it, the deliberateness, the consistency. She hadn't lost control on one bad evening. She had built a second life with careful intention, over months, while I came home from 12-hour pharmacy shifts and helped her son with his homework and thought I was paying attention. By morning, I knew what I was doing. I called Claire first thing. "I have the documentation," I told her. "File the papers." She had them ready by end of week. "Once we file and she's served," Claire told me, "you need to be out. If you stay in that house after service, it gets complicated. She'll have her lawyer file emergency motions." "I'm already working on it," I said. And I was. I'd spent the previous week applying quietly for pharmacy positions in Texas, Austin specifically. Good pay, strong job market, low enough cost of living to give me room to rebuild. 3 phone interviews already scheduled. The distance felt right, far enough from Portland that Serena wouldn't think to look there first. I started packing at home, slowly and without fanfare. Important documents, old photographs, a few things my father had given me before he passed. Nothing Serena would notice was gone. I moved boxes to the garage and stacked them behind the camping equipment. Marcus noticed anyway. Kids always do. "Why are you putting stuff in boxes?" he asked one evening, standing in the garage doorway. "Just getting organized," I said. "You know how I get." He didn't look convinced, but he walked over and helped me tape a box without being asked. We worked in silence for a few minutes before he stopped. "Nathan, if you leave, can I still call you?" My throat went tight. I put the tape gun down and looked at him. "If I go, Marcus, it isn't forever. When you're older, when you're old enough to make your own choices, you can find me, I promise. But I want to talk to you now," he said. His voice cracked. I pulled him in and held him until the crying passed. When he pulled back and wiped his face, he looked at me with the particular steadiness of a kid who has decided to handle something that shouldn't be his to handle. "Okay," he said. "I'll wait. I didn't sleep that night either." Paula's envelope, Claire's paperwork, the trust fund, the job interviews. Marcus in that garage, taping a box he didn't understand. I ran all of it in sequence and arrived at the same place every time. Serena had made her choices. Now I was making mine. 3 days later, Claire called. "Papers are filed. She'll be served tomorrow afternoon at the hotel. You need to be out before that." "I will be," I said. That night, Serena was at a hotel event. Marcus was at a friend's place for a sleepover. I loaded the last of my boxes into my truck and walked through the house one final time, turning off lights the way I always had, running my hand along the walls in the hallway where Marcus had measured his height every birthday. I stopped in his room. Baseball trophies on the shelf, posters he'd picked out himself, a drawing from 3rd grade still taped above his desk. I left an envelope on his pillow. Just a note, short and plain, telling him I loved him and that the baseball glove I'd bought him last summer was his to keep. Then I walked out, got in my truck and drove. By 4 in the morning, I was 200 miles south on Interstate 5. The highway was empty, just the engine, the white lane lines, and the occasional set of headlights going the other way. My phone buzzed with texts from Serena asking where I was. I didn't open them. Around noon, I crossed into California. I pulled off at a rest stop near Redding, checked my messages, and called Owen instead of listening to the voicemails. "Chase, where the hell are you?" He answered on the first ring. "Heading to Texas. Claire filed this morning. Serena's been served." He exhaled long and low. "She's been burning up your phone. Called me twice. She sounds like she's falling apart. That's not my problem anymore." I asked about Marcus. I left him a note. "The trust fund is set up and documented. He'll be taken care of." Owen was quiet for a moment. "You're doing the right thing. It doesn't feel like it from where I'm standing either, but you are. Thanks." I hung up and got back on the road. I drove for 3 days with minimal stops. Rest areas, gas stations, cheap food. I changed my number when I crossed the state line into Texas. Serena's parents had started calling. A few of her friends. I let all of it go to a number that no longer existed. Austin hit differently than I expected. The sky was a deep, specific blue that Portland never quite managed. The air was warm and dry and unhurried. I checked into a motel off South Congress and slept for 12 hours straight. The next morning, a message from Claire was waiting. "Serena has retained counsel and is contesting the divorce. She's claiming abandonment and seeking spousal support." I called Claire back immediately. "What does that mean for us?" Her voice was steady. "It means she's going to fight. She'll argue you walked out without cause and that she's owed support. But we have the photographs, the timestamps, the documentation. She has no traction. This may take a few months if she draws it out, but she doesn't have a leg to stand on. And Chase, Marcus isn't your biological son and was never legally adopted. She cannot pursue you for child support. The trust fund is completely separate and protected. She cannot touch it." Something shifted loose in my chest. How long until it's over? A few months. Maybe longer if she's aggressive. But just stay put. Don't engage with her directly. Let me handle the contact. I hung up and sat on the edge of the motel bed looking out the window at the Texas morning. For the first time in months, the air felt like something I could actually breathe. Now I had to build something. The pharmacy job I'd lined up fell through the first week. Budget restructuring, they said, apologetic. I wasn't worried. I had enough saved to float for 3 or 4 months, and Austin was growing fast. But as I walked the neighborhoods in the mornings before the heat settled in, something shifted in my thinking. I didn't want to go back to standing behind someone else's counter. My grandfather had owned an independent pharmacy in Eugene for 40 years. He used to tell me that ownership was freedom. I'd dismissed it when I was younger as the nostalgia of an old man. Standing in South Austin watching the morning foot traffic, I finally understood what he meant. I started researching. Austin had the population and the growth, but the big chains dominated. There was room, real room, for a pharmacist who remembered your name and your daughter's inhaler dosage and didn't make you feel like a transaction. Within 2 weeks, I found a small commercial space near Zilker Park. The rent was workable. The neighborhood was exactly right. Residential, families, older residents who'd been there for decades. I met with a loan officer at a local credit union. She was skeptical at first, which was fair. I was new in town and light on local credit history. But when I walked her through the business plan, the capital I'd already secured, and 11 years of pharmacy experience, she leaned back in her chair and said, "You've done your homework. I think we can make this work." 3 months later, I opened Cole Family Pharmacy. Just me and one part-time technician to start. But it was mine. Every prescription I filled, every patient I spent an extra 5 minutes with, felt like I was reassembling something I hadn't known was broken until I lost it. That's how I met Lydia. She came in one afternoon asking about her daughter's asthma management. Not just what to use, but how to use it and why and what to watch for. She had an easy, unhurried quality about her, and a laugh that surfaced without warning and filled the room before you'd noticed it coming. We talked for nearly an hour. She came back the following week, then again the week after. Eventually, I asked her to coffee, and she said yes without hesitating. Lydia was a nurse at a children's medical center. She was 36, had a daughter from a previous relationship, and understood the particular exhaustion and satisfaction of healthcare in a way that didn't require explanation. She didn't push for my story, just let me bring it out when I was ready. When I finally told her about Serena, about Marcus, about the night I drove out of Portland with my truck loaded and my phone buzzing, she just listened. "You did what you had to," she said quietly. "That kind of decision takes more than people realize. We took our time, no rushing." 6 months before either of us said anything that felt like permanence. But within a year, I couldn't imagine the apartment without her in it. She reminded me, gently, consistently, that the way Serena had operated was not the default, that not every person you trust will use that trust as a resource to drain. Meanwhile, the pharmacy kept growing. Word moved through South Austin the way it does in neighborhoods that still function as neighborhoods. The guy at Kohl's takes his time with you. He knows your kids' names. A second technician, then a second pharmacist. Within 14 months, I was looking at a second location. Remember that our supplement line, everything from fitness to overall wellness, is linked in the description and pinned comment below. Life had become, without my quite noticing it, something I was genuinely grateful for. I'd built it from a gas station receipt and a wedding ring in a desk drawer, and it was real in a way the previous version hadn't quite been, even at its best. But in the back of my mind, Marcus was always there, a quiet constant. I wondered if he was okay, whether he'd found the letter, whether he'd think about me at all when he reached the age where thinking about the past became something you could actually handle. 2 years passed. 2 years since I'd left Portland. 2 years since I'd watched the city disappear in my rear view and told myself I was doing the right thing and tried to believe it hard enough to keep moving. In that time, Cole Family Pharmacy had expanded to 2 locations and a third under negotiation. Lydia and I had gotten married in a small ceremony at a venue overlooking Lake Travis, her daughter as the ring bearer, Owen as my witness over a video call because he couldn't get a flight. Life had a stability to it now that felt earned rather than assumed. I was in my home office on a Saturday morning reviewing inventory reports when the doorbell rang. Lydia had taken her daughter to soccer practice. The house was quiet. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened the door and went still. Serena was standing on my porch. She looked different, thinner, drawn, dark circles beneath her eyes that no amount of sleep had touched recently. Her hair was in a messy ponytail. For a moment, neither of us said anything. "Nathan," she finally said. Her voice had a tremor in it. I didn't respond. I stood there with my hand on the doorframe, looking at the woman I'd spent 7 years building a life with and 2 years working very deliberately to forget. "Can I come in?" she asked. I stepped to the side without speaking. She walked past me into the living room, her eyes moving across the space, the furniture, the photographs of Lydia and me on the mantel, the evidence of the life I'd built without her. "Nice place," she said quietly. "What do you want, Serena?" My voice was flat. She turned to face me. "I needed to see you. I needed to talk." "We have nothing to talk about." "Nathan, please." She was twisting her hands together. "How did you find me?" She hesitated. "It wasn't easy. I hired someone, a private investigator. It took months. Mi pareja, you hired someone to track me down." A flash of something moved through me. Not quite anger, but close enough to keep my voice controlled. "I needed to find you," she said, rising slightly. "You disappeared. You left without any real explanation. Do you know what that did to me, to Marcus?" "Don't," I said sharply. "Don't bring Marcus into this conversation." Her eyes filled. "He asks about you constantly. He misses you. He talks about you like—" I turned away. "You should go, Serena." "Nathan, I'm pregnant." The words landed like cold water. I turned back slowly. She held my gaze. "I already gave you a child," she said quickly. "I gave you Marcus. You raised him. You were his father. And now, I'm pregnant, and I thought you deserved to know." I walked to my desk, bottom drawer. The envelope Paula had given me 2 years ago. I'd kept it not out of bitterness, but out of the specific knowledge that certain documents should not be destroyed. I handed it to Serena. "Open it." She looked confused, then took the envelope. When the photos came out, the color drained from her face. Photo after photo, Daniel Marsh, the restaurant in the Pearl District, the fitness club, the hotel, all of it time-stamped, all of it documented. "I know exactly what the last 2 years of our marriage looked like," I said. "Every lie, every man, every hotel. Mi pareja don't stand in my living room and try to use a pregnancy as leverage. That child isn't mine and you know it." She dropped the envelope, photographs scattered across the hardwood. "Nathan, please, I need help. I have nowhere to go. The hotel let me go. I lost the house. I'm pregnant and I'm alone and that's not my problem." She sank to her knees and grabbed my arm. "Please, I'm sorry. I made terrible mistakes, I know that, but I'm carrying a child and I can't do this by myself." I pulled my arm free and took a step back. Then I picked up my phone and dialed. "What are you doing?" Panic flooded her voice. "Calling the police. You're trespassing." "Nathan, no. Please." The 911 operator answered. "I need to report a trespasser at my residence." I gave the address. My eyes never left Serena. The officers arrived in under 10 minutes. 2 of them, a woman in her 30s and a younger guy who still had the careful attentiveness of someone new to the job. They came into the living room where Serena was on the floor. Mascara streaked down her face, still crying. "Sir, what's the situation here?" the female officer said. "This woman showed up at my house without invitation," I said. "I asked her to leave. She refused." Serena looked up at them. "Officer, please. I'm pregnant. He's the father. I just need help." The officer looked at me. "Is that accurate?" "No," I said. "We've been divorced for 2 years. I have complete documentation showing she was unfaithful throughout our marriage. Whatever her current situation is, it has no connection to me." Serena scrambled to her feet and grabbed the officer's arm. "He's lying. We were married. He raised my son. He has an obligation." "Ma'am, firm practiced. I need you to step back." She looked at me. "Do you want to press charges?" I looked at Serena for a moment. She was broken in a way that was unmistakable. The wreckage of choices made over years catching up in a single afternoon. Something small in me acknowledged that. I noted it, and then I set it aside. "No," I said. I just want her to leave and not come back. The officer nodded. Ma'am, you need to come with us now. Nathan, Serena's voice collapsed into something high and desperate. Please, I have nothing. The hotel fired me. I can't make rent. I'm pregnant and I'm completely alone. Please, you made your choices, I said. My voice stayed level. Now you have to live inside them. The officers walked her out. Her screaming carried down the driveway and then cut off when the patrol car door closed. I stood in the doorway and watched the red and blue lights fade down the street. Then I closed the door. I stood in the silence for a moment. Then I heard a car in the driveway. Lydia's SUV. She came through the door, read my face before I said a word, and walked straight over to me. What happened? Serena showed up. Lydia's eyes went wide. How did she? Hired someone to find me. She said she's pregnant. Tried to use Marcus to get to me. I called the police. Lydia put her arms around me and held on. Are you okay? Yeah, I said. And I was. The past had arrived at my door, and I'd sent it back where it came from. For the first time in 2 years, I felt the full weight of that lift off me. But there was still one thread to resolve. 3 days later, a Portland attorney's office called. Serena had filed a paternity suit claiming the child she was carrying was mine. I wasn't concerned. Claire Weston was still my lawyer, and she had the documentation she needed. She's demanding a paternity test, Claire told me. Fine, I said. Schedule it. 2 weeks later, I flew to Portland for the court-ordered test. The courthouse smelled like paper and institutional coffee. Serena was already there with her lawyer when I arrived, a nervous-looking man in a suit that didn't quite fit. She looked worse than she had in Austin, thinner, slower. She didn't look at me. The test was simple, a cheek swab. Results in a few days. I didn't linger. I was back in Austin by evening. The call came a week later. Results are in, Claire said. You're not the father. The case is dismissed. She has no further grounds to pursue you. It's done, Nathan. I thanked her and hung up and looked out through the pharmacy window at the street. Customers moving through the aisles. My staff at the counter. Lydia meeting me for lunch in 40 minutes. Life was good. Serena was in the past, and that was the only place she belonged. 6 years went by after that. 6 years of building. The pharmacy chain, the second location, the third. 6 years of Sunday morning hikes with Lydia, Friday dinners. The easy rhythm of a life that fits the person you've actually become rather than the person you were trying to maintain. Lydia's daughter was in middle school now and called me by name with an ease that meant more than she probably understood. What I didn't know was that somewhere in Portland, a kid I'd last seen at age 10 was growing up. One Tuesday afternoon in late spring, a letter arrived at the pharmacy, forwarded from my old Portland address, the one I'd left active for exactly this reason. The return name on the envelope was one I didn't recognize. I opened it in my office between customers. The handwriting was neat and slightly unsteady, like someone writing something important they'd rewritten 5 times. Dear Nathan, my name is Marcus Reeves. I don't know if you remember me, but you were married to my mom for almost 8 years. You were the closest thing to a real dad I ever had. My hands started shaking. I set the letter flat on the desk and kept reading. I'm 18 now. I'm finishing high school in a few weeks and starting at Portland State in the fall. Engineering. A few months ago, I found out there was a trust fund in my name that I never knew about. My mom wouldn't talk about it when I asked. Wouldn't talk about you at all. En mi pareja. I started looking. I found the letter you left me. The one you sealed and wrote on the outside. Mom had hidden it, but I found it last year when we were moving apartments. I read it probably 100 times. I want to say thank you. Thank you for teaching me to throw a baseball. Thank you for helping with homework even when I was being difficult about it. Thank you for showing up to my games when nobody else did. Thank you for not just erasing me when you left. I know why you left now. I'm not a kid anymore and I understand. I don't blame you. I'm writing because I wanted you to know that I turned out okay. The trust fund is going to cover most of college, which is more than I can explain in one letter. But it's more than the money. It's that you thought about me even when you didn't have to. Even when leaving meant leaving me too. You were the best dad I ever had. And if you're open to it, I'd like to stay in touch. Maybe visit sometime. I hope you're doing well wherever you are. Your son, Marcus. I sat with the letter in my hands for a long time. The pharmacy moved around me. The soft electronic tones of the prescription system, customers moving through the aisles, my staff going about the afternoon. None of it fully registered. When Lydia came by an hour later, she found me in the same position. "Nathan, what is it?" I handed her the letter. She read it slowly, all the way through, and when she looked up, her eyes were wet. "Are you going to write back?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "Yeah, I am." That night I sat down and wrote Marcus the longest letter I'd produced since the one I'd sealed in an envelope and locked in a garage safe 8 years before. I told him how proud I was. I told him that the door was open, not just figuratively but literally, that he could come to Austin whenever he wanted and there would always be a place set for him. I told him that leaving him had been the one part of all of it that I'd never been able to fully make peace with. And I told him that the trust fund wasn't generosity. It was just something that was owed to a kid who never asked for any of what happened to him. 3 weeks later, Marcus flew to Austin. I was at the arrivals area at the airport when he came through the doors. 18 years old, tall, carrying himself with a quiet steadiness that had nothing to do with me and everything to do with who he'd decided to become. He saw me and smiled. "Nathan, Marcus." We hugged, and it felt like time had done exactly what it was supposed to. Moved forward, deposited us somewhere neither of us had predicted, and left room for this. Over the following days, he met Lydia. We went to a game, talked about college and engineering and the future in the way you talk with someone who still has most of it ahead of them. When he left, he promised to come back at Christmas. I stood outside the terminal and watched his plane lift into the blue Texas sky. I had thought for years that walking away from Marcus was the most permanent failure of my life. But standing there in the airport light, I understood it differently. I had done what I could, the letter, the trust fund, the open door, and he had walked through it when he was ready. Not because I'd engineered it, because he'd chosen it. That's the only kind of return that actually holds. Serena was somewhere in the past, living inside the choices she'd made. I didn't think about her much anymore. Not with bitterness, just with the neutral distance of someone who had closed a door and watched the latch catch. I drove home to Lydia, to the pharmacy, to the life I'd built from scratch in a city that had no reason to know me and had let me put down roots anyway. And for the first time since that Tuesday evening in September, when a cup of coffee hit a hotel carpet and spread outward like something that couldn't be undone, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be.